All right, everyone, the House Republicans actually accomplished something, just by the skin of their teeth, because they're the GOP, so we wouldn't expect anything else. They impeached Mayorkas. Yes, Alejandro Mayorkas impeached by one vote, actually, in the House. 3 Republicans defected, and so it was a razor-thin margin. I guess this time the House Speaker decided to ask the members first whether they were yay or nay before holding the vote, and said, okay, we pretty much secured it. It's going to be close, but I think we got the votes. And I think Ken Buck voted against it again, and a couple of others. Remember, there was an extra defector the first time around, and the impeachment was narrowly defeated. And the GOP, as usual, got egg on its face. It was, ridiculous. And they should, again, don't bring forward a vote unless you think you have the votes. And the way to do that is to talk to people, and especially people who seem on the fence, or they're skeptical, they're not sure, and then you say, okay, can I count on you? Look, I'll throw some pork into the next budget for you or something. I'll sweeten the deal. The House controls the purse strings, so that sort of deal-making is a common fixture of their budgetary bullshit. But they did impeach him. It's the first time since the 1870s that somebody in that position has been impeached by. We're talking the Reconstruction period, so it's fairly historical. I thought the reaction was rather funny, which is that Joe Biden came out, condemned it, and said, well, no, come on, man, this is unconstitutional. Well, you're not the arbiter of what's constitutional or not. The court system generally is. For better or for worse. Often for worse, by the way. They determine that. Joe Biden has passed numerous pieces of legislation that have been torpedoed by federal courts and the Supreme Court as unconstitutional. You remember when he was trying to mandate the honk medical intervention for all federal employees, for example. That was ruled unconstitutional. You remember when he tried to make some of the bailout aid from the lockdown period race-based for restaurants and for farmers. Those fell through. Those were ruled unconstitutional. Over and over, his student loan grift and so forth. It's all been ruled unconstitutional. Happened like a half a dozen fucking times. It's constant. Joe Biden doesn't know anything about the Constitution. He thinks that the Second Amendment is about BB guns and that the First Amendment's just about political opinions you happen to agree with. And the 10th Amendment doesn't really cover the southern states at this point. I mean, they've made that abundantly clear with regards to the border, hence the impeachment of Mayorkas. The effective charge is that Mayorkas willfully is not doing his job. Looking at the U.S. border and the federal policy as it's been applied there, our immigration laws duly incepted and signed off by previous administrations, so proposed in House and Senate. They passed through both chambers, after again some pork deal making, signed off on by Obama or Trump or whatever, especially the Trump era policies, are still in legal effect, but they are not actually being effected. That's what they're proclaiming. They're saying Mayorkas is not actually upholding the law that we incepted with regards to our border. And that is true. It is objectively true. Now, he goes to the Senate. They will acquit him. There's no way that they're going to get enough votes to remove Mayorkas and officially find him guilty of his willful disobedience against both Congress and the American people and the basic premise of having a border at all. That's because it'll be very party line. The Republicans will all vote in favor. Well, maybe not all. Mitt Romney could be a holdout, Cornine, and a few of these other morons. By the way, again, good Republicans snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. What you need to do is have it very, very partisan. So the American people see that the Republicans, lock, stock, and barrel, are saying that Mayorkas is willfully violating the law and ignoring the border. And the Biden administration is doing so willfully, not out of incompetence, but out of malevolence. Elon Musk agrees with that too, for what it's worth. And the Democrats get him on record as voting against removing him from that position and being uninterested in actually tackling the border crisis. This is, by the way, for the Democrats, a ticking time bomb. If, and probably when, they acquit Mayorkas. Of course, Schumer and some of the others have already condemned this move. It's unconstitutional. It's the charges, it's bullshit. Mayorkas is... the border's a mess. There is a border crisis. Even Biden admits it, but we're just going to stick our heads in the sand. Get him on record as saying we're uninterested in guarding the border, so we're going to exonerate Mayorkas of this charge. Just get him on record, and then campaign on it. The border crisis is one of the 3 main issues for this election, and probably will remain so. The Republicans can win on that issue. It's even beginning to piss off liberals. Independent voters are massively against what's going on at the border. It's so lopsided, it's not even funny. There's a reason why Trump carries a 20-point advantage with independent voters in numerous recent polls. Did you know that too? Supposedly, Big Don is just such a big screw-up, but he's got a huge lopsided advantage with the most important voting bloc in the country. This trickles down to his polls against Biden in the swing states, effectively places where there are more independent voters in some cases. You're going to get fewer independents in California or in Wyoming than you're going to get in Wisconsin, you see. For politically pragmatic reasons, it makes sense, and I don't see it as a bad thing, by the way, because I'm not a partisan. The reason for that is partially the border crisis is no longer just a border crisis, too. It used to be like, okay, we've got 2 million illegal people crossed into the country this year. You didn't have the Democrats trying to unilaterally declare them all asylum seekers. You had a remain in Mexico policy, etc., etc. An attempt was made. You actually had a border. Was it still a problem? Yeah. Even during the best years under Trump, there was still a border crisis. It doesn't matter if illegal crossings are at a 40-year low if they still exist. You're never going to get it to zero, but we could push it down much further than even Trump accomplished. But there was an attempt being made. It was attempted. The policies were in place. They were being actually followed through with, etc. You got rid of catch and release and stuff like that. It was still a problem, but much less of a problem. In the public's consciousness, as Trump reformed the border, it became less and less of an issue. They probably should have kept it in the back of their minds, hey, if we elect this Joe Biden dude, they might reverse these policies that are actually beginning to work fairly well. Unfortunately, a lot of people didn't get that memo or think ahead. I think there's a lot of buyer's remorse going on right now. Mayorkas clearly isn't doing his job. Even if you claim that it's just because of incompetence, basically, okay, well, there's nothing that he can do. It's someone else's fault. He's powerless to stop the waves after waves of illegals coming into the country. Okay, so you're saying that he's incompetent. Well, incompetent people shouldn't be in government office either now, should they? But really, it's willful. At least in part, it's a willful move by the administration to try to cause havoc, to try to bring in people that it openly admits that it wants to eventually make citizens, thus thinking that they're going to have loyalty to the Democratic Party. Center for Progress and other groups have openly stated this. Some of the left-wing think tanks and so-called activistic firms have already admitted to the fact that this is the plan. This is what Trump sought to reverse when he wanted to down the DREAM Act and kick people out of the country, several million of them, that qualified under Obama's DREAM Act. He tried to do this with the stroke of his pen and was told by the courts mysteriously, no, Mr. President, for some reason, this particular executive order would be unconstitutional, even though that ruling would be inapplicable to pretty much any other executive order that you could pen. I was under the assumption that an executive was capable of nullifying a pre-existing executive order. Apparently, again, it's not if you're Orange Man. Supposedly, he's going to become a dictator if he's reelected. That's funny because he faced nonstop obstruction for 4 years. It was constant and unending. Just like the constant unending problems at the U.S. border. It'll be a ticking time bomb, though. If the Democrats do exonerate Mayorkas, they are effectively putting themselves on record as saying, we don't see the problem. Yeah, we don't see there's no problem. What problem? Oh, you don't like those ethnics coming in. Well, you bigot. Well, I don't see them again being welcomed in Martha's Vineyard or other NIMBYist white liberal parts of the country. They keep getting shuttled from the southern border to the northern states, and then they get married on their way when they actually get there. They are put out into a little town or a ghetto somewhere. That's give us your huddled masses, and then we will neglect them completely and allow a bunch of slavery and trafficking to happen. There might be more slaves in the United States right now than there are in goddamn Libya. You can't even account for half the people that come in because you never have a border encounter. That's about all. Peace out.